Welcome into the checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. I'm Ken Ray.
I'm Nicholas Robin.
And I'm Nicholas Tacek.
Each week on the checklist, we check off a list of things that you can do to make your digital life more secure. Setting up new hardware, selling old hardware, surfing, shopping, other things that start with S. Hey, like security! We don't want you to be freaked out about security, but we do want you to be concerned with security. Because when you pay attention to secure practices, it's much easier to identify potential threats. This week, 5 ways to secure your browser. That is the most used piece of software for just about anybody who's online. I mean, how else are you going to share pictures of food and watch video of cute cats? We're in such a hurry to see what we want to see and share what we want to share that many of us don't think about securing our browsers. I mean, haven't the companies that build the browsers done that for us? Okay, yes, kind of. The major players in the browser space have beefed up security over the years, but again, when you pay attention to secure practices, it is much easier to miss the pitfalls. So, items on this week's safe browsing checklist: reject third-party cookies, regularly clear browser data and cache. We're going to look at password storage options. We're going to look at browser add-ons, do's and don'ts. And finally, protection against fraudulent sites. First up on the checklist, rejecting third-party cookies. This is kind of weird to me because every site you go to has a cookie policy. It seems like every site you go to is throwing cookies your way. Talk to me about what our settings should be on this.
The reason why it's number 1 is because this is one of the most important things to do here to help secure your browsing experience. You want to configure your browser to reject third-party cookies. If you've been around on the web for a while, you probably know a thing or two about cookies. But let's do a brief refresher first. A cookie is a small morsel of data on your computer that contains information a website wants to store. This info might be a social media password or a preference you've saved on a website. There's a lot of possibilities. Not all cookies are bad. Abuse of the cookie feature, though, isn't uncommon. Advertisers can write cookies through your browser to track your web activity. It's a little creepy, right? There are a few things we could do to tackle the problem. First up, disable third-party cookies. These are cookies not set by the site you're actually visiting, but instead by a third party on the site, like one of the advertisers we just mentioned. Every browser from Safari to Chrome has an option to limit the cookies it accepts so that anyone could do it. But we should note that sometimes rejecting cookies will cause minor functionality problems around the website. When you do encounter these problems, most browsers, again, will allow you to whitelist a domain name or accept its cookies. If it's a site that you know and trust, the risk is low. You may want to enable the Do Not Track option from your browser. Most of the browsers have this. This alerts websites never to track your behavior to, from, or on their website. Unfortunately, it's still currently optional for sites to accept Do Not Track. That's why choosing to block out access to cookies is a smart first step.
I guess a question I have is, how do you know where to do that? I was on Amazon last night looking at an item, and it was an item I didn't end up buying. And then every place I've been online today, funny enough, Amazon thinks I might be interested in that item.
You probably are interested in it.
Well, that's true. And I can't imagine how they could have figured that out. First of all, do I care? I mean, it's Amazon and I go to Amazon. So maybe that's one I don't worry about. But if I don't want that to happen, like, where would I have turned off what cookie?
Like, if you're shopping for an engagement ring, you don't want that ad following, your significant other around when they use the computer.
Sure.
The thing is, identifying which cookie can be a task, because it's kind of a combination of what was on Amazon's own cookies, what were the third party ad cookies, tracking cookies they had on their site. Because basically what happens is it's an ad network. that Amazon is paying to show their advertisement. And that you have to figure out kind of which ones to delete, and you have to figure out where to go in your browser to do so. Each browser is a little different. Some make it easy to get to those sections, some don't. You usually have to search by domain name. It can be a bit of a chore. We should probably do an episode on that, actually.
Let me ask one question. I know that a lot of browsers do have a I don't even know what they call it. It's like a secret page or a private page or something like that. I mean, would constantly using a private page actually stop that from being an issue, or is it just a cute idea that there's a secret page and really you're still being tracked?
For the most part, it works. There have been some incidences in the past where private browsing modes have leaked data, like leaving data on disk when it's not supposed to, which can then be reread by the site the next time you go. Safari had an issue with that. It was probably like 4 years ago, though. I think Chrome's had an issue within the past couple of years, but it's not really common. So yeah, using incognito mode or private browsing mode can help with that, but it's also kind of a pain because then you don't have your browsing history. You don't have any real way of figuring out what site you found that great item on or whatever if you were shopping. So there's kind of a downside to blocking everything in a private mode like that.
Right. The drag about breaking the things that track is then you can't track.
Exactly.
So again, it's kind of like what we were talking about, knowing what to turn off or knowing, where you want to draw that line, I suppose. Perhaps along those lines, the next item up on the list, regularly clear your browsing data like cookies and the cache.
Yeah. Okay. Well, once we've configured that cookie setting, what's next? And the answer is there's more stuff. Your web browser stores an enormous amount of data for every page you visit, outside of private mode or incognito mode when it's not supposed to store anything. But otherwise, it's storing tons of data to tons of different files. There's a reason for most of it, like cache files, for example. Basically, if the content on a web page hasn't changed, it's a static web page or changes very infrequently, the next time you visit the site, your browser will basically load it from a cache first and see if it needs to actually load new data from the web server. If it doesn't, it doesn't have to download all that content, so the page loads really quickly. That's a positive. A negative is it's a record of everywhere you've gone. That's not just your browsing history. So for security concerns, especially for privacy concerns, regular clearing out data that your browser accumulates can be really important. A lot of browsers have an option built right in to delete that information. Depending on the browser, you'll have more or less control over what you're deleting. Some browsers let you delete items one by one. Others, like Safari, only give you an option to clear large chunks of data at once. So it depends kind of on which browser. You don't have to do it every single time you're done surfing the web. Some browsers do have an option to automatically get rid of that data as soon as you quit your web browser. Again, downside is if you're clearing your browsing history every time, you don't know what sites you were at. If you're clearing the cache, sites might load a little slower. But basically, doing that where you're automatically clearing everything on browser quit is kind of the same thing as private browsing in Safari or incognito mode in Chrome, where it's just not keeping any of that data on disk. So another option, though, if you don't want to be kind of getting rid of everything in between browsing sessions, we have a program, Privacy Scan. It lets you clear out this data kind of a piece-by-piece basis. So you can choose exactly what data from what web browser or app you want to clean. So maybe you want to clean, say, your cookies and your cache file for Chrome, but you want to leave your browsing history in place. You can do that. Say you want to, I believe Safari, it might have been Safari, was one where you couldn't just clear the cache alone anymore. You had to clear like browsing history at the same time. Luckily, with Privacy Scan, you can just clear the cache and leave your browsing history in place. So another kind of benefit to regularly clearing out your browser, stuff like that, is it can speed up your web browser. I know I just said that it can slow it down if you're clearing the cache file, but if you've got like 10,000 cookies, your browsing is going to go a little bit slower than if you had a couple hundred. So kind of maintaining your web browser on a regular basis is a good idea. Whether you're using Privacy Scan or one of the built-in options in your web browser, it's a good idea to take control of that data and basically know what is being stored by your browser. It kind of gives you more control then over your privacy and security. We do have more information on Privacy Scan available on our website at securemac.com/privacyscan.
Now, you said something about stuff that's actually being stored by your browser. That's actually the next item up on the checklist. What to not let your browser store. Specifically, don't let browsers store your passwords. Use secure software instead.
We know that it could be tough to remember all your passwords. Everywhere we go on websites nowadays wants you to create an account. They want you to log in. So how do you remember all those passwords?
Oh, wait, I know this one. Use one.
Surely you're not using that one password. I don't care about this site. I'm just going to use this password. Well, you don't care about this site. You don't care about this other site. How many sites are you using that same password on?
Yeah.
All those sites you don't care about until one of those sites gets compromised, until one of those sites becomes the same site that you used for this other site, and now you have a lot of passwords to change on all those sites you just really didn't care about. Browsers make it easy to remember them all. Every time you log into a site, most browsers are going to ask you if you want to remember your credentials. How many of us say yes without thinking? Surely our web browsers can keep all of our passwords safe, right? Well, maybe not. In the past, even Google Chrome had issues with how it handled saved passwords. Plus, in the unfortunate event that your system gets compromised, it's prudent to expect that your saved passwords on your computer might have been compromised as well. So a more secure solution is to switch to a password manager. Solutions like LastPass or 1Password, though they may not be perfect, offer far more security than a simple web browser storage. Plus, you get the benefit of built-in ability to generate stronger passwords. No more using a variant of your cat or dog's name. So when you don't need to remember the password anyway, why not just use a random generated password that this program is going to be able to help you remember? And most browser extensions for these programs will help you quickly bring that password back up. So they offer plugins for you for your favorite web browser. So when you access that website, it'll actually automatically, or once you authenticate for the session, fill in the password information for you so you could bring up that information again in this secure method. If you struggle remembering your passwords when you lose your cookies, a password manager will make sure that that doesn't happen again. Meanwhile, your browser will be a more secure environment for it.
And remind me, I think did we not do a list of password managers or secure password managers a few weeks back?
Yes, we did.
Okay. So forgive me for giving you more work to do this week, but you'll move that, or can you move that to the notes for this week's show as well?
Sure thing.
Excellent. So everybody, now I can say safely, you can find a list actually of good password management tools at the website securemac.com/checklist associated with this week's show. Up next on the checklist, use browser add-ons and extensions to enhance security.
Yeah, basically extensions aren't just useful for improving password security. They have all sorts of other cool uses. They can help secure your overall browser experience. One thing to note before we get into this is you have to be careful about the kinds of extensions or add-ons that you're adding to your browser, because that's actually where a lot of the adware these days is coming from. So, check those reviews on the extensions before you install them. Most, like Safari and Chrome, for example, I believe Firefox as well, have a section for each extension that gives review information before you install it, so you can kind of tell if it's, a scam or not. But not all are risks. There are a lot of good ones out there. So, for example, Ghostery. Sites sometimes use other methods than just a tracking cookie to keep track of you. So sometimes this blocking a cookie won't work to block the tracker. Ghostery lets you see on every website that you visit what trackers are requesting your information. So you can then selectively block and blacklist those trackers on a server basis to avoid. Adblock is another popular extension. Basically, website ads are a common vector for malware, browser hijack exploits, and other severe security issues. So, you might see hundreds or thousands of banner ads in a day, depending on how much you surf the web. It's that one infected ad that you need to avoid or worry about, and Adblock can help you do that by blocking ads. You can whitelist specific ones if you want to support a site or if it's stopping the experience. I know a lot of online magazines and newspapers won't work at all if you have an ad blocker. Also, keeping anti-malware software on your Mac just in case is a good idea. Scan those add-ons and extensions after downloading them before you start using them. But no blocking solution is going to be 100% foolproof. In a similar vein, there's kind of a new thing that Apple introduced with recent versions of Safari on both iOS and Mac platforms that are called content blockers. Basically, what they do is they allow you to kind of tailor a specific set of rules for what content you actually want to see in your browsing session. And you can use them to block tracking stuff, block ads. They're really kind of highly customizable, really lightweight, really fast. Safari automatically reads the rule set in at the beginning when it's loading, and it doesn't have to do it for every site you visit. It kind of loads it into memory and just does its thing. It can significantly speed up website browsing because it's not trying to download ad data from 15, 20 different ad networks, which sometimes is what causes a website to load really slowly. It's trying to load that stupid flash ad in the corner. So there are a lot of Safari extensions for these content blocking. Basically, I guess apps on iOS, on the Mac, it's just a Safari extension itself. A lot of them are pre-configured. A lot of them give you various options, blacklisting sites with one click, whitelisting sites, filter libraries. You can kind of fine-tune exactly what you want to block and what you want to see. It gives you much finer control over what personal information your browser is sharing with the web. One content blocker that I use and I really like is OneBlocker. They have it for iOS is where I use it. It's got a lot of customization options. You can stick with what they give by default, which does a wonderful job. If you need more, you can kind of turn on or off filters one by one. We'll also list some other recommended content blockers and add-ons on our site, along with the write-up for this episode. So we'll have lots of this extra data and these links for you at the end of this.
So these Safari extensions, where do you get them? Where are they sitting at? Are they in the App Store or within Safari?
It depends. On iOS, you search in the App Store, and then you have to download the app. And usually when you try and launch the app, it will say, here's how you set this up. You have to go into the settings, and then there's a specific section for the Safari extensions. You enable it there, and then it's loaded. It's kind of convoluted and roundabout, and I think they could probably make a better user experience with that in the future, hopefully. On the Mac, however, you just open Safari, open the Safari extensions from the preferences screen, download the extension, and that's where you manage it, is Safari extensions. There's no app. There's nothing outside of Safari. So it's different between iOS and the Mac, and it's definitely something that we'll hopefully see improvement in the future on iOS.
One last item on the checklist for this week. Use settings and tools to provide protection against fraudulent sites. This is kind of interesting because, well, how's that going to work? I mean, well, you know what? There's the topic. I'll just go ahead and turn it over to you instead of trying to figure out how to ask the question. Please say more.
All right. Well, there's one final thing here. It's making sure to take advantage of the built-in ability of your browser to warn you about malicious sites. Google, their job is to scour the web, adding sites to their index. It's how Google searches work. When they're doing that, they come across lots of bad sites. that might be distributing malware or adware or doing other bad stuff that could harm your browsing experience. And they'll blacklist those sites. Google provides a safe browsing database to all of the major web browser providers. So browsers like Safari and Firefox, in addition to Google's own Chrome browser, can all take advantage of that. And what it does is if you're visiting a site that's on that blacklist of bad sites, it'll show this big red warning page saying, stop, this page is bad. It's been known to distribute malware or steal your information or whatever. It's a whole list of stuff. Are you sure you want to actually visit it? It makes you stop and think. And it's kind of the same type of alert that we've discussed before, where Google or actually any web browser will tell you if a security certificate has been expired. You might not want to visit that site. Most likely you don't. So anytime you'd see that warning telling you that you're about to visit a site that's been known to distribute malware, back up, go somewhere else. Don't visit the site. The database is updated really regularly by Google. Your browser should be checking that by default, but double check your browser settings to make sure that safe browsing database is enabled and updated, and that will help keep you safe as you're surfing and just visiting random websites.
I want to know which browsers you guys use and why you use them. What's your favorite browser?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Yeah, I'm like, it's giving away information. No, in my experience, I used to be a diehard Safari fan, actually, and then it started having real memory problems a few years ago, and it would bog down if I had more than a couple tabs open. I do like Chrome a lot, although that also has its own memory issues. So I haven't really settled on a single browser. I don't really use Firefox ever because I don't like it. But, personal preference there. It's kind of a balance. Some browsers have features that I like over others. Some are more configurable. I don't know if I really have a favorite, just not Firefox.
I'm dyed-in-the-wool Apple, so I use Safari until Safari gets clunky and slow. And then I actually do use Firefox. But it's only like if one... half the time I'm doing that, actually. So I've got Safari, and I use Safari. And then if something's giving me trouble, I'll go to Firefox. But really what I'm doing at that point is checking my internet connection.
Yep.
Like if I can get there with Firefox and not get there with Safari, then obviously I'm having trouble with Safari, and I'll go ahead and finish whatever I'm trying to finish using Firefox. Generally speaking, though, and maybe I'm just not that much of a power user, I'm not having the kinds of trouble with Safari where I need to go to something else, generally speaking. So like if I'm having that trouble with Safari, I'm going to have that trouble with Firefox as well. And what I really need to do is go turn off my... Is it my router or my modem? I can never remember which. I know it's not my switch. That's a joke for last week's show, by the way.
Okay, so for Chrome has a cool option that you could share your settings, your bookmarks, your histories, your passwords with other devices.
Safari has one too with iCloud.
Do you do it?
No.
Do you share it?
Nope.
Why not?
One way to think of the cloud is someone else's computer. All the data you're storing there. I mean, despite Apple, when we were talking about last week with Apple encrypting all the data on the cloud, stuff like that, it's still your personal data. Yes, it's convenient to have it kind of synced between all your devices, but I would prefer keeping my data on one computer or one device and just dealing with a little less ease of use in exchange for a lot more privacy.
I think that's a really good tip to live by.
So are you saying you don't, or are you just saying that's a good tip to live by?
No, I don't. I think I might have bookmarks.
Oh, no, I heard you say that. No, I was asking Nichols.
Asking me. I think that's a great tip to live by. Do I do it for convenience? No, I don't do it for convenience either. I don't upload that data because, again, somebody else's computer. Encrypted or not, the whole fluidness of it, being able to continue where you left off from one device to another, I don't need it. I don't want it. I'll bring it back up. I'll log back in again.
Okay.
And another question, do our users share their data? Do they log in for the convenience? Or, do they have the same mindset we have?
I got to say, honestly, because I do share that information. And I got to say, you're almost asking a philosophical question at this point. like if there was an app that said, hey, I can move your data to all these different places, and it's by company never heard of with no reviews, then that's kind of silly. But at some point, I mean, Apple has built itself on trust. And a lot of people, I think, I mean, I am one of them. I tend to trust Apple. There's some information that some of the Apple things will ask for occasionally that I don't feel like sharing. But there are other things that I'm fine with, and I go ahead and do that. And I do like the convenience of, I was reading an article on my Mac, and I want to finish it, but I want to finish it in the living room. And so I'm going to pick up on that article on my iPad. I mean, it feels like correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, what you're talking about is sort of like the difference between like an InfoSec's view of the world and the general consumer's view of the world, right?
Exactly. And that's kind of what I've seen with other people in our field, a feeling of they'll exchange the privacy for the convenience. I think one of the deciding factors, though, is that none of the major, I'm talking Amazon, Apple, Google, none of the major cloud providers have suffered a severe data breach yet. Of we're talking hundreds of millions of users' information. I think it's inevitable that it will happen someday.
Yeah.
And I think that will be when people will decide whether or not the cloud is something they want. I think that's what it's going to take. And I mean, at the same time, though, yeah, in the meantime, the convenience, especially if you're, if you're not using your computer for like really sensitive work, corporate secrets, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's a little different for home users compared to people who are using their computers to generate stuff for a company or trade secret type stuff. It's kind of trade-offs there again.
Let me ask you a question. You've both said, I mean, you're both information security people. You've both said that you don't do this. Would you say it's folly for the general consumer to do that? I mean, if I like being able to start an article on my Mac and finish an article on my iPad without having to relog in and find out where I was, is it folly for me to do that? Or is it just you operate at a higher level of security for your own personal stuff than do others?
It's definitely not folly as long as the user is aware of like basically what's going on with the situation. As long as they are aware that that's where their data is going in the cloud, and they're okay with it, more power to them. That's perfectly fine. It is a personal choice and a personal trade-off. And I wouldn't fault anyone for choosing the convenience there as long as they're understanding potential risks and benefits of doing it. So just being educated on the topic, I think, is the most important aspect. Which is
exactly what this show is all about. I mean, we say every week that what we're about is trying to make sure that you're able to move more securely through all of the stuff that we do online, all of the stuff that we do digitally. And there are not 5 steps in any one topic that are going to make you absolutely 100% safe. There aren't 5 steps on any one topic that's going to make you, 100% secure. What we're about is trying to make sure that you've got some good practices in your arsenal. This is not about changing every single thing you do across the board in one day. It's about developing good habits. The same thing with the browser stuff that we talked about today. The top thing for you to do is to be aware. I mean, if Google gives you one of those big red X's saying don't go here, hey, here's an idea, maybe don't go there. I mean, the usual rules still apply, no matter how safe you've made your browser, no matter how safe you've made your phone. Don't click on something suspicious or something unusual. Yes, Google Safe Browsing is very helpful. A site may suffer from an infection before Google notices that, though. So having additional layers of protection and means of taking out, any of sort of the bad things that might befall you, that's the best way to go. I mean, it's not having to build a fortress every day. It's going around and making sure that nothing's broken, that you're operating in the most secure ways you can. Now, all that said, we did list a few steps. We listed a few products. We listed a few things that we said are going to be available on the website associated with this particular episode. The website that we are talking about is securemac.com/checklist. That website, again, is securemac.com/checklist. And if you have a question for us, a comment that you would like to share, something that you'd like to say to one or all of us, there is an email address for that. It is checklist at securemac.com. That email address again is checklist at securemac.com. And if you can't remember that, remember this. You are listening to The Checklist by Secure Mac. And we will talk to you next week.